Listen up, because what I'm about to tell you is the reason I'm never going for a 2 a.m. snack run ever again. There's this 24/7 quick check off the highway near my place, the only thing open in my entire rural, middle-of-nowhere town. It's about a 25-minute drive if I'm speeding, which, let's be real, I always am. For you city folks, that's basically right next door. My sleep schedule is a complete disaster, so I've been to that quick check more times than I can count. I like to think I'm generic enough to blend in, but let's be honest, the overnight crew probably recognizes me by now. This all went down just last week, so every single detail is painfully fresh in my mind. It was past midnight, and I was deep in a coding session on my laptop. My brain is wired to peak between 9 p.m. and 3 a.m., and I was in that perfect, hyper-focused flow state. But the problem with late-night grinding is that you go from perfectly fine to absolutely starving in a split second. That's what forced me to shut things down and go find food at the perfectly reasonable hour of 2 a.m. Just for context, the highway to the quick check is more of a local road, so it's usually dead empty. The drive there was totally uneventful. I pulled in, ordered a sandwich from the counter, and started pacing the aisles while I waited. A mix of caffeine and my ADHD means I can't just stand still. That's when I saw it. As I was pacing near a corner, I noticed a person sitting crisscross on the ground, directly facing one of the refrigerators lining the back wall. It was so bizarre my brain initially skipped over it, then I snapped my head back around to make sure I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't. There was literally a person sitting on the floor, staring at the fridge like it was the most fascinating thing in the world. All I could see was a brown coat and jeans. I had to get a look at his face. My plan was smooth: walk a few aisles down, turn the corner quickly for a peek, and then dip out before he noticed me staring, because obviously, that's super rude. But my plan failed spectacularly. The moment I turned the corner, he whipped his head around and stared right back at me. His movement was so sudden and jarring that I froze solid for a few seconds, forgetting why I was even there. And one look at this guy confirmed he was far from normal. Forget sitting on the floor, his eyes were abnormally wide. His lip was quivering violently like he was freezing, and his whole posture was twisted up, like he was straining against himself. But the absolute worst part was the look on his face. He wasn't smiling or frowning. He was just staring with this utterly blank, dead-eyed expression that made my blood run cold. The whole scene was freaky as hell. After a painfully long stare down, I finally broke eye contact and bolted up an aisle to get my food. It wasn't ready, so I waited at the counter, angling myself to watch that corner, half expecting him to come lumbering out. He never did. My food finally came, I grabbed it and got out of there. I thought it was over, but as I was turning back onto the highway, movement caught my eye. I glanced back and saw a person sprinting full tilt from the store entrance to the far end of the parking lot. I was already merging, but as soon as I saw the flash of a brown coat, I knew. It was him. I drove past and saw him jump into a pickup truck. I didn't want to imagine what someone like that was rushing to do at 2 a.m. I was just glad I was out. I sped off, wanting nothing more than to get home. After a few minutes, the store lights faded behind me, and I was back in desolate darkness. I'm always the only car on the road this late, which is why it was so jarring when I saw headlights appear in my rearview mirror. And it was terrifying when I realized they were gaining on me fast and I wasn't exactly driving the speed limit. My first thought was police, so I slowed down. The lights kept closing in, and I braced for the flash of red and blue. But when the car finally got close enough, my heart stopped. It wasn't a cop. It was him. The guy from the quick check. It was the same truck. I've never been more certain of anything. I slammed my foot back on the gas. The truck behind me started flashing its high beams and honking. Panic set in. Do I try to outrun him or pull over and pray he keeps going? I was in a sedan, he was in a pickup. I thought I could outrun him. The faster I went, the more pure, unadulterated terror took over. It was the feeling that you are literally approaching death. By the time my speedometer hit 100 miles per hour, a voice in my head was screaming that I was going to die if I kept this up. I swerved into the right lane, hoping he'd shoot past. Instead, he swerved to stay locked on my tail. I started slowing down, intending to pull onto the shoulder. The moment I took my foot off the gas, his truck rammed into the back of my car. The impact jolted me. I gripped the wheel, and the reality hit me. This was a life-or-death situation. This man was trying to kill me. Everything was happening too fast to think. I knew he was going to ram me again, and at this speed, I'd spin out and be at his mercy. I don't know if it was terror or instinct, but the second I saw him lunge forward for another hit, I swerved hard to the left and slammed on the brakes. His truck shot past me. I watched in my mirror as he swerved wildly, lost control, spun out, and careened off the highway into a field. My hands were shaking violently, but I forced myself to keep driving. I sped the whole way home. The second I was inside, I called the police. I gave my statement, though I couldn't pinpoint the exact spot on that dark highway. That quick check has parking lot cameras, so I'm pretty confident they'll catch him. It's only been a week, so I haven't heard anything yet. My car needs some repairs, but it's not too bad. As for why he targeted me, your guess is as good as mine. I just pray I never see him again. This next story takes us back to the summer of 2022. I was 25 and working what you might call an unusual logistics job. I was hauling refurbished electronics and custom PC parts for a last-mile delivery startup trying to compete with Amazon in weird, rural markets. The routes were brutally long and completely erratic, sometimes 12-hour drives straight through the night, deep into remote parts of the Southwest that most companies refused to touch. The pay made it worth it, and I didn't mind the drive. I grew up in a road-tripping family. On this particular night, I was on the final leg of a Phoenix to Lovington run. It was about 1 a.m., and I was winding through a desolate stretch of Route 82, past the outskirts of Lincoln National Forest in southern New Mexico. If you've never been there, it's hard to describe the isolation. The road is narrow and poorly lit. You might see one other car every half hour. But here's the crucial part. This road is the only viable route for miles. GPS alternatives would add 2 hours. If you need to get through there, you take Route 82. I was listening to a true crime podcast when I rounded a bend and saw a red hatchback, hazards flashing, awkwardly pulled onto the gravel shoulder. My headlights lit up a woman standing beside it, holding her phone high in the air, desperate for a signal. My first instinct was to keep driving. I'm not heartless, but I'm not naive about the dangers of stopping in the middle of nowhere at 1 a.m. But then I thought about my own girlfriend or sister stranded like that. Plus, I had a Glock 43 holstered under the steering column. The company didn't officially know, but in those areas it felt like common sense. I slowed down and cracked the passenger window an inch. The woman, who looked about my age, rushed over and tried the door handle. It was locked. She said she needed a ride to the nearest gas station. Her car died and her phone wasn't working. Her voice was jittery, stressed, or maybe on something. I hesitated. The vibe was off, but having that firearm within reach tipped the scale. I figured I could handle myself, so I unlocked the door. She got in fast, mumbled a slurred, "Thank you so much," and didn't look at me. The slurring made me think she was drunk, which set off more alarms. I asked her some basic questions: what happened to the car? But she kept deflecting, just urgently telling me to drive. Nothing added up. I was seconds from telling her to get out. Then, I glanced in my side mirror at her car one more time. A man stepped out from behind it. He'd been hiding there the whole time. My adrenaline spiked. I turned to face forward, and my blood went cold. Another figure had stepped directly into the road about 50 feet ahead of us. He was holding something long, a bat or a pipe, and he started walking toward my car. That's when my survival instinct screamed into overdrive. I slammed my foot on the gas and floored it. The woman whipped around to look back and immediately started yelling. Then she frantically started digging in her purse. I knew exactly what she was reaching for. Before she could find it, I yelled, "Freeze!" and drew my gun. I didn't point it at her, I rested it on the steering wheel where she could see it clearly. She stopped. Instantly. She stopped moving, stopped digging, and just stared straight ahead with this unreadable, blank expression. The drive to the next town, Artesia, was the most tense 30 minutes of my life. When I pulled into a lit gas station with 2 big rigs in the lot, I told her to get out. She refused, giving some stupid excuse I don't even remember. I'd had enough. I leaned across her, yanked the passenger door open, and physically forced her out. She stumbled and fell onto the pavement, screaming incoherently. I saw a trucker start jogging over from one of the rigs. All he saw was me throwing a woman out of my car. I didn't have time for that confrontation. I yelled a warning to him about her and her friends, then I peeled out of that lot and didn't look back. I drove to another gas station to fill up. Shaking, I inspected the passenger seat. Buried between the cushions was a burner phone, a battery, and a sealed pack of zip ties. I didn't want to think about what those were for. I threw it all in the trash and got back on the road. I never reported it. Not to the police and definitely not to my company. Legally, I didn't want to explain the gun or why I forcibly removed someone. You can connect those dots. But one thing is absolutely certain. Being armed that night is the only reason I'm here to tell you this story. This happened about 3 years ago during a cross-country road trip my husband and I took from Utah to Georgia. We'd mapped out a scenic route that passed through places he wanted to see, but the trade-off was driving through some seriously desolate stretches. The worst was a 100-mile section of U.S. Route 400 in western Kansas, nothing but flat farmland for eternity. We'd been driving all day, and I'd fallen asleep in the passenger seat around sunset. I can sleep anywhere in a car, so I was out cold. Around 10 p.m., I woke up to the car slowing down. My husband had pulled into a tiny, lonely gas station off the highway. He said he was getting snacks and gas. I figured this was my last chance for a decent bathroom for a while, so I got out and headed inside. I made a critical mistake. I didn't bring my phone or purse. I thought I'd be in and out. The cashier, an older man, didn't even look up. The bathrooms were down a narrow side hall at the back. As I pushed open the women's restroom door, I almost collided with a woman coming out of a stall. And she was unforgettable. She had messy, unkempt gray hair that looked weirdly sticky. She wore foam flip-flops that made a soft slap-slap sound. And she was wrapped in a thick purple and green coat. In Kansas, in the summer, it was 80 degrees out. She was carrying a knotted plastic grocery bag. When she saw me, she didn't look away. She just fixed me with this intense, expectant stare, like she was waiting for me to say a specific password. Uncomfortable, I gave a polite nod and tried to step around her. She didn't move to let me pass. I figured she'd leave. She did not. Instead, she turned and followed me back toward the sink area. But she didn't wash her hands. She didn't look in the mirror. She just stood there, arms at her sides, staring again, waiting. My unease skyrocketed. I hurried into a stall and locked the door. The second I sat down, I regretted leaving my phone. I had no way to call for help, and every instinct screamed that this woman was dangerously off. I waited, listening. After a few minutes, I heard the slap-slap of her flip-flops moving toward the door. The bathroom door opened and then slammed shut. Relief washed over me. I waited a few extra seconds to be sure. That's when I heard it. Breathing. Soft but unmistakable. Not my own. Someone else's in the bathroom with me. The horrifying realization hit. She had faked leaving. She'd opened and slammed the door but never left. She was still in here, standing silently, probably in the corner by the exit, just out of my sight line. I froze, trying to quiet my own panicked breathing. A long time passed. Then the door opened and closed again. The breathing stopped. Now she was gone, I thought. But my fear was too deep. Just as I was about to unlock the stall, I heard a huge, gasping inhale like someone who had been holding their breath for minutes, followed by the door opening and closing a third time. That's when true panic set in. This woman had pretended to leave twice. She was playing a twisted game and I was the target. I had no idea what she wanted, but it wasn't good. The suspense was torture. I finally couldn't take it anymore. I unlocked the stall as quietly as I could and stepped out, bracing myself. The bathroom was empty. I washed my hands in record time and practically fled into the store's main area. I didn't see her. A large man was checking out at the counter. I used him as a shield, lingering by a rack until he finished and walked out. Then I followed closely behind him through the door. If she was waiting outside, at least I wouldn't be alone. The second I stepped into the night air, I saw her. She was lurking off to the side of the entrance, now glaring directly at me. She was holding something in her hand. It looked like a knife, but I couldn't be sure. Her posture was crouched, coiled, like she was about to spring at me. I prepared to scream or run, but instead of attacking, she quickly turned and shuffled around the side of the building toward the back. I didn't wait. I sprinted to our car, jumped in, and yelled at my husband to drive. As we pulled away, I looked back and saw her standing at the edge of the building, watching us leave. I told my husband everything. He was rightfully upset I didn't have my phone. One thing's for sure, I will never, ever use a roadside restroom again, and I am perfectly happy with that new rule. This final story is from 2020, when I was 24 and working for a small Midwest logistics company, delivering auto parts between cities. It was usually easy money, long drives, decent pay, no micromanaging. But this job is also the reason I have one ironclad rule: never stop at a highway rest area after dark. It was mid-January, brutally cold, one of those nights where the darkness feels absolute. I was on I-80, heading east from Des Moines to Davenport around 10:30 p.m. The drive was a lonely monotony of asphalt and the occasional passing semi. Then, the drowsiness hit hard. My eyelids were lead weights. I saw a blue rest area sign and decided to pull off for just a few minutes to wake up. The place was eerily deserted. A few dim lights, a small brick restroom building, and a dozen empty parking spaces. Well, almost empty. One other vehicle was there. An old, unmarked white van, parked with its lights off at the far end of the lot. I parked under a light, locked my truck, and went inside. The men's room was cold, smelling of mildew and cheap cleaner. As I splashed water on my face at the sink, I heard the door creak open behind me in the mirror. I spun around. No one was there. I shook it off, blaming the wind. But when I stepped back outside, my blood ran cold. The white van's headlights were now on. The engine was still off, but those two bright beams were cutting through the darkness. I hadn't heard it start. This was wrong. I rushed to my truck, fumbled with the keys, started the engine, and pulled toward the exit. As I did, the van's lights suddenly shut off again. Maybe someone's just sleeping in there, I tried to tell myself. I merged back onto the interstate. For 5 minutes, it was just me and the road. Then, in my rearview mirror, 2 pinpricks of light appeared in the distance. They grew closer, faster. It was the van. No doubt about it, the same boxy, windowless cargo van. It caught up rapidly and rode my bumper, then pulled alongside me, matching my speed of 75. The driver rolled his window down halfway. I could barely see him, just a shadow and maybe a baseball cap. He started gesturing wildly for me to roll my window down, then pointed aggressively at the bed of my truck. For a second, I hesitated. Did a strap come loose? Did I lose something? Then I remembered. My truck bed was completely empty. There was nothing to lose. This wasn't a warning. It was a trick. I ignored him, staring straight ahead. He started honking and swerving closer to my lane. I jerked away to keep distance. He then sped ahead, cut in front of me, and without warning, veered onto the shoulder and came to a dead stop. I flew past him, my heart hammering against my ribs. I pushed my speed to nearly 90, just trying to put miles between us. For the next 20 miles, it was a terrifying game of cat and mouse. He'd fall back until I couldn't see him, then materialize out of the darkness right on my tail again. I knew I had to get to a public place. I took the next exit to a 24-hour truck stop, pulling under the bright lights near the diesel pumps where a few semis were parked. The van didn't follow me in immediately. I waited, watching. 2 minutes later, it crept up the ramp and idled at the far end of the lot, facing me. That was it. I bolted from my truck into the adjacent diner. A bell chimed. A woman in her 50s was behind the counter. I must have looked as panicked as I felt because I stammered out that a van had been following me. She didn't hesitate. She called over a massive trucker in a flannel shirt sitting at the counter. This guy nodded, stood up, and walked outside with me. The van was still there, idling in the shadows. The trucker muttered, "Yeah, that ain't good," and told me to go back inside. He then walked straight toward the van. I watched from the diner window. I couldn't hear the words, but a few seconds later, the van suddenly reversed, swung around, and peeled out of the lot. The trucker came back in, shaking his head. "Two guys in there," he said. "Hoodies up," just stared straight ahead. Didn't say a word. I stayed in that diner for an hour, drinking coffee until I stopped shaking. I finished the drive with my eyes glued to my mirrors. When I finally got to Davenport, I inspected my truck under a hotel light. On the tailgate were 2 greasy handprint smudges, like someone had tried to open it with dirty hands. I quit that job a few months later. Now, my rules are simple. Fill up before dark, pack your own snacks, and if you must stop, make sure it's somewhere crowded and blazing with light. Because I know with absolute certainty that if I had rolled down my window or pulled over for that van, I would not be here today.